to our Rev Up class of the week. This is held on Tuesdays at 11 a.m. Glad you can make it today. We are covering working with sellers. Our slide deck is titled Finding Motivated Sellers and Preparing to Win the Listing, but it's really working with sellers. So we're going to talk about it up to the listing presentation. Next week, we're going to go into the listing presentation. And then also in this one, we're going to touch on the CMA, but we're really going into depth on the CMA tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. So we're going to do a hands-on training on the MLS, digging into how to do a CMA or a comparative market analysis report. So welcome. We're going to talk about methods of finding motivated sellers through lead generation and prospecting. And then we'll talk about the pre-listing package and preparing for that listing presentation. See if I can get my slideshow to work. There we go. So these are our learning objectives today. We're going to talk about circles of opportunities, how to find qualified and motivated sellers, right? We want them both qualified and motivated. We're going to talk about customizing your Realty One Group listing presentation. In fact, I'll probably pop onto One Design and show you where to find that. The 7 steps in the listing process, how to qualify sellers, using a pre-listing questionnaire to make sure they are qualified, doing effective research and preparation, the components of a pre-listing package, how to determine an accurate price range. Again, we're going to dive more into that using that comparative market analysis tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. And then scripts and dialogues for sellers. All right. So we want to be listing focused in our business. And the reason that I do that, you'll hear me say that over and over and over again, is that, in fact, if you watch the business planning where we talked about setting up your year, one of the methods that you should always lead generate from is leads from listings. And that's because that's why we want to be listing focused. These are the top reasons for securing listings. You're going to have greater control over your time. With a listing, you don't have to go hop in your car and show 20 properties. Okay, you don't have to be available on Saturday morning at 8 a.m. to go show properties and Tuesday evening at 6 p.m. So you have greater control over your time with listings. You're going to build a reputation in your marketplace because you're going to have a sign in the yard. You're going to be promoting your listings. There's more ways to get your name out there with that listing. You're going to be hosting open houses, which should have your names on the sign. So you're beginning to build that reputation in your marketplace. You can handle considerably more volume with listings than with buyers. Okay, we can handle more listings at one time than we can handle buyers. And that circles back around to the fact that you have greater control over your time and that listings don't take as much time as buyers do. Okay, we're not hopping in a car. We don't have to sit there during inspections with our listing. The buyer's agent does that. So there's lots of things that get taken off your plate with a listing that you have to do with a buyer. So you can handle more listings. Most sellers become buyers, which result in additional transactions. Like how that works. The seller is selling a property. They need to live somewhere. Okay. And even if this seller is moving out of the area, you can pick up that referral on the other end. In case you didn't know that, yes, you absolutely can help them find a qualified agent wherever it is that they're moving to, if it's outside of your service area, and you can collect a referral fee for that transaction. So you're doing absolutely nothing except vetting the agents ahead of time, connecting them, and then you collect a check at the end for like 25% of that commission. Who would like to do that? Who would like to sit around and collect checks from other agents? I would. All right. And then listings lead to leads, which equals leverage. Remember, anybody that can see that for sale sign, statistics tell us somebody that can see that for sale sign is going to sell their property, as well as you're going to get potentially sign calls. You're going to be able to market that property on social media, host open houses. So you should be able to leverage that listing for additional leads to continue to grow your business. So that's why listings are so important. Okay. In reality, I feel like listings have a little bit more stress involved. I feel like buyers' transactions are a little easier. The property is what it is, right? But with a listing transaction, I feel like there is a little bit more stress, but I promise you it's worth it. It will pay off in the end. All right. Finding motivated sellers. Super important. There's lots of different ways to find motivated sellers. You've got your circle of influence, your friends, your family, anybody that you know, the people that you're sitting next to at your kid's baseball game, the people that you are networking with at your spouse's work event. If you have another job, the people there at the other jobs. I was talking with an agent the other day who has another job, and they were talking about doing pop buys, not to other houses, but pop buys in their office. How cool is that? I thought that's like an idea that I never thought of before. My mind was kind of blown. I was like, oh my gosh, how cool is that? Like, it's spring, so I'm going to do a pop buy on the other people in my office's desk. That's so cool. So if you have another job, leverage it for potential leads. You can do farming, right? Include geographic farm or demographic farm, where you select a group and you're going to stay in touch with them on a regular basis. Remember, farm is a frequent area of repetitive marketing. You could go door knocking, right? Go right to the source, choose an area close to home, or better yet, you could concentrate on your farm, or you could concentrate around listings that our office has or that you have, or an open house that you're hosting, and go door knock those doors. Host open houses. I think it's one of the most effective ways to build your client base for both buyers and sellers. Oftentimes people who come in that open house are looking to accomplish the one thing. They're thinking about buying a house, or they're thinking about selling their house. So they're casing other houses either as potential to buy, or there are neighbors that are looking at it thinking, oh, well, what's this house selling for and how does mine compare? Right? So open houses are a great way to build your client base. You've got expired listings, for sale by owners. Those sellers, they're probably a little frustrated with lack of activity. They're still motivated to sell. And they can be one of the best source of listings. We don't have a ton in our market, but keep a watch on them. Online marketing and social media, right? If managed properly and done frequently, it can be a very effective way to build your database. So a couple of years ago, I was scrolling through my Facebook friends feed, and I noticed somebody has like, oh, we're looking for a contractor because we want to expand our house. I knew they had just had a baby. And I said, hey, it may be more cost effective to just sell that house and then buy up. And they're like, oh, we don't even know if they can do that. And I said, well, let's talk to a lender and see if it's possible. I'll run some comps and tell you what your house might sell for. And then you can talk with a lender and see what your payment might be moving forward. And then we'll just run the numbers. I ended up getting 2 transactions out of that. I sold their house and I helped them buy another one. So pay attention to things going on in people's lives in social media that might be triggers. You can join groups and different things in social media, which allows you to connect and build relationship with other people. And then you're just going to look for those triggers. I would not say it's the best method, although it probably would work for some, to just spam everybody on social media. Hey, if you want to sell your house, call me. Hey, if you're looking to, if you have any plans with real estate in the next 12 months, give me a call, right? I don't think that's going to be as effective, but it can be. Also, just sharing your story, right? Sharing the clients that you're working with, how you help them overcome hurdles, not just that, oh, they bought a house, or oh, I sold a house, or I've got a house listed, but let's share a story behind it and create something that wants to draw people in and go, oh my gosh, Leticia is amazing. Did you see what she did for those other people? I think that's what we need too. We need somebody that can help us in that same way, right? So we want to make sure that we do a good job sharing our story. You could send out mailers, right? You could send out information to promote your business. Again, you're probably on mailers. That's something that you want to be consistent with. If you're marketing around an existing listing, like sending it to the 100 closest homes through our One Suite plan, we can actually do that. It will handpick the addresses for us. We don't even have to pull them up. And let's say you've got a listing, so you're trying to leverage that for additional listing leads. That would be a good time to touch people in that same area 3 to 4 times, right? We can be like, coming soon, or just listed, under contract, all contingencies removed, or closing soon and then sold, right? And same thing on those postcards. If we're going to send out mailers, we want to share a story on there, okay? Or get a call to action so that people have a response. Okay. once you commit to your best prospecting methods, you're going to want to be consistent with it, develop a daily plan, and spend a minimum of 2 to 3 hours per day on your working days for a solid year. Okay, we probably want to reevaluate it once a quarter, but we really want to work that plan, develop systems and processes around it. I highly recommend that you have 5 methods of lead generation. Your first one is going to be that sphere of influence or your circle of influence. Your second one is going to be leverage leads or listings for leads. And then you're going to select 3 additional methods that you're going to work to develop systems and processes around so you can consistently execute those week after week after week. Any questions so far? You're going to see here on the screen that in addition to the ones that I just touched on, we talked about life events, we talked about door knocking, specialized groups, right? Joining specialized groups, whether it's on social media or in person, where you're connecting and building relationship with other people. You could collect referrals either from past clients or from other agents in outside areas that might have people moving to our area. Talks about garage sales, right? Go see who's hosting garage sales and start up a conversation with them. Oh, cool. This is really neat. How come you decided to do a garage sale today? Oh, we're getting ready to move. Oh, you are. Do you have an agent? Right? Great place to find people selling their house. You might find probate sales, right? Connecting with business to business referrals with attorneys, whether it's probate or divorce attorneys, right? Those all have listings, are people that need to sell homes. Or out-of-state owners, right? So connecting with those out-of-state owners that may be looking to get out of the landlord business. Since California is so landlord friendly, those might be some methods of finding listings. All right. You want to commit a script to memory. Okay, and not because we want to sound like robots, but once it becomes part of our memory and we practice scripts, we have those conversation starters memorized, we have objection handlers memorized, then what happens is it just becomes second nature. The more that we say it, the more that we repeat it, it just becomes second nature. And then all of a sudden you're in the grocery store and somebody is like, oh, you're a real estate agent. How's the market right now? And you're like, oh my gosh, the market's great. It's a great time to sell. And they're like, oh, I heard it's not. Well, now you've got that objection handler ready to go. And then all of a sudden it's just rolling off your tongue. And then you walk out of the store and you're like, oh my gosh, I just got a listing lead. And I don't even know where that response came from. I mean, I practiced it, but I didn't know I really knew it. Right. So we want to practice those. So many people, like I mentioned, don't want to learn scripts because they fear that it's going to sound scripted or sound like robots. If one example is, like when you were younger, I don't know how many of you, well, I've got some people more my age on here today, I think, and then some younger, but we used to have like phones that were attached to the wall, right? We didn't have cell phones in our pockets. And when that phone rang, we had to answer the phone, and there was usually an appropriate way to answer it in your family, right? Like, oh, it's the Compton residence. That was my maiden name, right? And so that was a script and it became your own. You just got where you said it. So the more that you practice scripts, the more that you say them, the less scripted it sounds and the more natural it becomes. And oftentimes what sounds scripted to us doesn't always sound scripted on the other end of the phone. So just kind of keep that in mind. I would say 99% of every single successful agent in real estate uses scripts on a daily basis. Okay, most of the time they're not even aware of it anymore because it's just become second nature. And again, that becomes the most effective way to handle objections. Okay, a script that is internalized is no longer a script, and they accomplish several important objectives. They eliminate stammering, stuttering, and audible pauses that cause us to sound unsure of ourselves, right? Scripts give us confidence. And the more confidence you have, the more likely it is that somebody's going to be like, oh my gosh, yes, I want to work with you. It allows you to provide a consistent servicing of our clients, since we basically use the same words and deliver the same message using those scripts and dialogues. Okay. And you can go into the Realty One University and you can search scripts, and you will find many time-tested scripts for you to choose from there. So you can even type like seller lead and you'll find a script to match. In fact, if you go into like open house scripts, you can even find those type of scripts. If you're looking for something specific, do it. You can find them in there. And you can create a script for any scenario. Okay. And for the most part, there's probably already one that's been created. I would recommend that when you find a script, that you just use it as is, that you don't worry about tweaking it or changing it too much, maybe a word here or there, but that's about it. And the reason I recommend that is that most of the time those scripts, especially the ones that you're going to find like in One University, or if you search them online, they've been tested, they've been proven to work. And so you're worried that you're not going to sound like yourself, but we really don't want you to sound like yourself. We really want you to sound like a millionaire real estate agent. So use the script as it is. Once you internalize it, begin using it, getting comfortable with it, then it'll naturally become yours and you'll tweak it just a little bit. Formula for a successful script is you want to memorize the script before you customize it. You want to internalize it. The best way to do that is you want to say it over and over and over again. So if you don't have one, get a script partner that you can practice scripts with at least 3 times a week. It can be over the phone. It can be in person in the office. It really doesn't matter. Just get somebody that can be your stand-in buyer or your stand-in seller, and you can swap roles. You can run through your listing presentation. You can throw objections at each other to make sure that you're confident in handling those objections. Practice, practice, practice. When you're not practicing with your script buddy, you should be spending 15 to 30 minutes a day just reading through your scripts. Okay, if you've got one that you're working on, let's say that you're like, oh, I found the door knocking script that's going to end all door knocking scripts, which is going to help me with my farm. I'm going to read through that script at least 3 times a day. A couple times a week, I'm probably going to try to write it down like 3 times, right? Because our memory, it helps our memory to remember things if we do things in different methods. So, right, we can hear it, we can say it, and we can see it. So those are the 3 ways that we're able to internalize things. So number 1, when you're saying your script, if you will record yourself so that you can listen to it over and over again, that will help you internalize it. Saying it's going to help you internalize it, and then writing it so that you can see it is going to help you internalize it. Okay. Oftentimes when we talk about memorizing things, if you're like, Amy, this is not school. That sounds horrible. I could never memorize things. Start with just 1 or 2 lines of that script and just repeat those 1 or 2 lines over and over and over again. You can read them off the page until all of a sudden you don't need the page in front of you anymore and you've memorized those 2 lines. Then add the next sentence in, right? And then go back and read those 3 over and over and over again until you've added that 3rd sentence in. And then just keep building on it that way. That's one of the easiest, simplest ways if you have trouble memorizing things to memorize a script. Okay, any questions about scripts? I do have the chat box open as well. You can raise your hand if you have any questions. You can just unmute yourself and share your thoughts. You're welcome to. All right. As part of our prospecting schedule, I highly recommend time blocking your calendar to make that happen. Ideally, 3 hours a day would be your lead generation time, and that's protected time that you aren't going to let anything else come before. Okay, usually what happens with agents is we don't have a whole lot of business, so we're really good at running our calendar and managing our time and time blocking things and adhering to our calendar. And then what happens is we get a couple transactions going, and all of a sudden we kind of get busy with the day-to-day of the transactions, and we forget about all the things that we should be doing to continue to grow our business. The first thing that agents generally throw out the door is lead generation. They're like, oh, I've got clients. I don't need to do this anymore. And it's not really a conscious decision. It's more of a subconscious decision. It just stops happening. Okay. But then what happens is your transactions close. And then all of a sudden you're like, man, I've got no more business. I'm kind of stressing out just a little bit. Well, that's because you didn't continue lead generating through that entire process so that you have consistent business coming in. So time block your prospecting or your lead generation. Don't let anything come between you and that lead generation. hour one, so on a 3-hour time block of lead generation, if you're like, Amy, that sounds like torture, it's not going to be, I promise. Hour one, you're going to prepare. You're going to complete and compile who you're going to touch base with that day, maybe do some research on them. Whatever that is, you're going to prepare. Okay. Hour two is going to be the actual prospecting. It's the actual phone calling, door knocking, whatever it might be. And then hour three is follow-up. Those might be follow-up from calls you made yesterday. It may be things that you need to send out to the calls that you made today. If I'm talking to somebody on the phone and they're like, oh yeah, I would love to know kind of where our house value is, you're perfect. I'll get that over to you in just a little bit. I'm not going to stop in the middle of my prospecting and then start doing a CMA for their house. I'm not switching tasks. I'm going to continue prospecting until that follow-up time or until I've got time blocked later on in my day to prepare that market analysis to send over to them. Okay. Super important. Also, your mindset is so important when it comes to prospecting effectiveness. Positive energy is going to drive positive results, and confidence is key, which can be heard through the phone. So one thing that you can do is put a mirror in front of your computer or behind your computer so that you can see yourself when you're making your phone calls, if it's phone calls that you're making, because if you smile through the phone while you're making those phone calls, you're going to sound happier and more confident. If you're nervous and frowning and like scowling back, you're not going to sound very confident, and people are going to be like, I don't know who you are, but I don't want to do business with you, right? So we want to sound confident. Another thing that can help you sound more confident is stand up if you're making phone calls. Okay. It's better for your health too. So more time spent on your feet is good. So stand up, make those phone calls standing up in front of your mirror so that you can see the reaction on your face. Claudia, were you going to add something?
No, sorry, I was pushing buttons and accidentally hit.
Was there something you'd like to add? No, I'm joking.
Well, actually, I've always heard, okay, 3 hours prospect, 3 hours, but like breaking it down like this, I have never done. I dread it because I'm like, 3 hours, but this actually dissects it and actually makes it much more manageable. It's in my brain.
Right? Doesn't seem quite as overwhelming if you break it down like this.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that you could do is you could prospect for a response, right? So if you're like, man, it's the first of the month and my goal this month is to have 3 listing appointments. I am prospecting. I know it says I'm only like hour 2 is prospecting, but I'm going to prospect 4 hours if it takes me to set a listing appointment this week. And then I'm done for the week. I don't have to do anything else. So if you cleared out your Monday for like setting those appointments, you could have all 3 appointments done on like the first Monday of the month and be done prospecting for the rest of the month, right? You could move on and then pick it up at the end of the month to set appointments for the next month, right? So there's no wrong or right way to do this. We could be like, okay, all I can handle right now is 1 hour. 1 hour is good. Whatever my results are, I'm just knocking it out because I'm not even prospecting right now. And then it may become more of a game to you as you get more and more confident with prospecting. You're like, okay, this isn't as bad as I thought it was. I'm preparing, I'm prospecting, I'm following up now, but I'm not getting the appointments. Now I'm going to keep prospecting until I get an appointment, or I'm going to keep calling until somebody answers their phone, or I talk to 10 people, or whatever that might be. So then you can kind of set goals that way. And then once those goals are met, you might do it in the first 10 minutes. You might do it in 30 minutes. It might take you an hour and a half. You could set it up that way as well. Let's see here. In that preparation hour, just so you know, getting your head right. Remember, we talked about mindset. So setting yourself up with a positive attitude, that might be a good time, not only to figure out who you're calling, but also maybe to say some positive affirmations. Like, people will answer their phones today. They want to talk to me, right? Or I'm so excited to talk to people when they open their doors today, if you're going to go door knocking, right? So saying those positive affirmations, pick 5 or 6 based around each type of prospecting that you might want to do, so that you can say those during that preparation hour to help set your mind at ease and get you pumped up for the results that you're looking for. Let's see here. We talked about standing. And then just remember too, that it's, even though you have your scripts, I always recommend the Ford sandwich. And you're like, Amy, what is that Ford sandwich again? That's family, occupation, recreation, dreams, right? So it's going to be like, we want to have that scripted call. but it's okay to dive into building relationship with people. You're going to get a lot further building relationship, talking about family, occupation, recreation, dreams, and diving into business, especially if you're talking with your sphere of influence. Please, please use that forward sandwich. So you're connecting with that sphere on a personal level and then taking it into business and then moving on. Okay. There we go. A good way to, in that follow-up hour, a good effective use of your time is anybody that like answered the phone or that opened their doors, like send them a thank you card in the mail. Just like, hey, it was so great. It doesn't have to be thank you, but it'd be like, hey, it was so great connecting with you the other day on the phone. Or I really appreciated getting to know you when I knocked on your door the other day. Right. So we can send thank you notes in the mail. That's a great way to connect with your people on a real level. Any other questions about the prospecting schedule or scripts? All right, we want to make sure to track our progress. Again, if you were part of the business planning that we did at the end of last year, beginning of this year, I don't remember which it was. I shared that really great spreadsheet with you that kind of had this set up so that you could track your actions depending on what type of lead gen activities that you're going to do. But you want to track the amount of calls that you make. You want to track the number of doors that you knock. You want to track the preparation for your open house and how many people actually showed up, how many people turned into clients, right? We want to know how much each phone call is worth. How cool would that be, right? So if the average sales price is like 500,000 and your listing commission is 3%, again, commissions are not set. Okay, that's just an example. You guys have the right to move your commission wherever you want it to be on a listing. Even within our company, we have no rules around that. So let's say 500,000, we're just using 3% as an example. That means that your commission on a listing is worth $15,000, right? If it takes 100 phone calls to obtain a prospect, that's either going to buy or sell, right? And that closes, then each of your phone calls is worth $150, right? How cool is that? So next time you're like reluctant to pick up your phone, be like, that's a $150 phone call. That's a $150 phone call. And the more that you track your numbers, like I know that I have to make 83 dials in order to get 10 people on the phone to set one appointment, then I know my numbers, right? So you're going to know your conversion ratios even better. So track those numbers, and it doesn't matter. It could be, we're going to track each one separately. So if it's sphere of influence versus door knocking versus farm, right? Circle dialing, whatever it is that you're doing, track them all separately so that you know what your conversion ratios are. And then at the end of 12 weeks, at the end of our quarter, we can go back and evaluate like, oh my gosh, I've consistently called people like random strangers 100 phone calls a day. That's 500 phone calls a week. And it's not led to any appointments. Well, we know it's not because your action is lacking, right? We know your action is there. If you look back on it and you're like, oh, I've talked to 5 people a week, or I've made 5 phone calls a week and I haven't had any results, then we know that it's probably your actions. Like we need to step up our actions versus if we're making 500 phone calls a week, it's probably not actions. It's probably scripts and dialogues. We probably need to adjust what it is that we're communicating and saying to get a better response, right? So that's going to help us if we're tracking our numbers, we know where those adjustments need to be made. It also allows us after like 6 months or so to be like, or a year, to be like, okay, this isn't working for me. Circle dialing's not working, or calling FSBOs isn't working. I didn't get any leads this year from FSBOs. I want to change up my lead generation methods and I'm going to take that off my list, right? So it's a good way to know so that we can make an educated decision when we go to tweak and change our business plan for the next year or the next quarter or the next 6 months. Okay. If you need me to share that spreadsheet with you again, that goes into detail and has all that stuff on it, please let me know. You can throw it in the chat box and either myself or Abby, it'll probably be Abby, let's be honest. We'll share that spreadsheet with you again so that you can be able to track your numbers on that if you want an easy way and you don't want to create your own.
Amy,
All right.
what was the
Yes.
spreadsheet called again?
That is a great question. I think I called it business planning.
Okay.
But I don't know. If we have time at the end, I can look it up.
Okay.
Or
Thank you.
if you throw your name in the chat box, Abby will send it to you again so you can find it. She'll send you the link. Or she might even come up with the name while we're still on our training, although sometimes I name things random and then they're really hard to find again.
Abby might have my wrong email as well. I think a lot of my stuff is linking to my older email.
Oh, you can always direct message her in that chat box with the correct email.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Once we get somebody on the phone and they're like, oh yeah, I was thinking about selling my home. Yeah, maybe we could have an appointment, right? We are going to set the listing appointment. I highly recommend you set it like 48 hours in advance, so that you have a couple days to prepare for that listing appointment. Get really excited, right? You're like, oh my gosh, I've been making calls for 3 weeks and somebody finally wants a listing appointment. How about this afternoon at 3 o'clock? That's great, but you don't have a whole lot of time to prepare for that. Now, all of a sudden, what you've done is you're now throwing prospecting out the window and you're preparing for your listing presentation. And then, we started that vicious cycle of stopping the prospecting, not having any more incoming business to deal with our one potential client. So I highly recommend not doing that. I would recommend, like, if today is Tuesday and somebody talks to me and they're like, oh yeah, we were thinking about it. You'd be like, oh, great. Let's sit. Why don't I come over? We can talk about the process, do a quick walkthrough of your home. We'll get the ball rolling. We can talk about timing and everything. How does that work? And they're like, oh my gosh, that sounds great. I'd be like, perfect. Today's Tuesday. How about like Friday? Would morning or afternoon work better for you? They're gonna be like, oh, mornings are better. Perfect. How about 10 or I'm not going to interrupt my prospecting time. So if I'm prospecting from 9 to 12, I may not even ask them if mornings are better. I may say, hey, are afternoons or evenings better? And then I'm going to be like, perfect. How about 1 p.m.? Right? I'm going to give them a time. I'm not just going to say, oh, Friday's wide open. What time works for you? Because now all of a sudden I have lost some credibility because I don't have any other things going on Friday. Okay, so I'm always going to try to pigeonhole them into an appointment versus leaving my calendar wide open for them. And keep in mind that if I did end up booking that listing appointment for 10 a.m. on Friday, then my 3-hour time block of prospecting, we can't just erase it and forget about it. We need to erase and replace. So I need to move it to another time on Friday to make sure I get my prospecting done. If you're like, Amy, why do you keep talking about prospecting in the morning? Well, because most people dread prospecting. Okay. It's one of those things that people are likely to put off, especially real estate agents. All businesses should be prospecting and lead generation, but let's say that it's usually as realtors, one of those things that we put off. So by knocking it out in the morning, we have a tendency to actually get it done. If we bump it and we say, oh, we're going to prospect from 3 to 6 because I think more people will be home. Then what happens is come 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, now we've started having conversations. We're behind on everything. We're trying to get caught up. Oh my gosh, my listing's falling apart. I've got to deal with that. And then you turn around, you're like, oh my gosh, it's 7 o'clock at night and I never got to my prospecting. It's really easy to let things get in front of it the later in the day it goes. That's why we always mention doing prospecting or your lead gen in the morning. Knock it out, get it done, and then move on with the rest of your day. All right, so customize your listing presentation inside of your Realty One group. There are listing presentations ready to go. You just have to download them and then tweak them and customize them. Super easy to do. Again, each listing or each seller is going to be a little different, but for the most part, your presentation or the services that you provide, your value propositions, they're going to be pretty much the same. Some of the most common listing presentation components are going to be your background and what makes you uniquely qualified to sell their property. Okay. Set yourself up for success. You might want to talk about your company and how it supports you and how it's going to support the seller in getting their house sold. You might want to talk about your team, each person's role and qualifications. And if you're like, Amy, I'm not on a team. Yes, you are. You have your team. You have a transaction coordinator. You have the lenders that you work with. You have how the title company falls into place, right? So you can talk about how that all works together for a successful transaction. You can introduce during that listing presentation who your transaction coordinator is because they're going to be interacting with that transaction coordinator. If you have an admin, you can introduce your admin during that time. Great way to do it. We're going to talk about market knowledge. You're going to go over the pricing and market research. You might want to talk about your knowledge of target marketing, the target market buyers that you have determined most likely for their property, right? Know whether it's an entry level property, whether it's a move up property, what kind of property is it? We may want to talk about marketing techniques you've chosen to help find those buyers. How are we going to do that? Online strategies, search engines, website, personalized apps, right? We might want to talk about that stuff, social media strategies, marketing to agents with listings and recent sales in the same price range or same area. Maybe they had multiple offers. Marketing to the agents of our office, and the timeline of actions and steps and events for their listing. Okay, so those are some things that you may want to include as part of your listing presentation. Our goal with the listing presentation is to not bore them to death with the details, but we're trying to alleviate any uncertainty that they have and make them confident that they know and understand the process and that we're the best ones to fulfill that process for them. Okay, the 7 steps of the listing process are you're going to be to complete the pre-listing questionnaire and qualify the seller when you set that listing appointment. Okay, we want to make sure that they are motivated and qualified to sell. We're going to do research and preparation. That's where we're going to do that CMA report. We're going to prepare the pre-listing package, which leads us to step number 3, which is creating and delivering that pre-listing package. That's why I say, hey, make it like 48 hours, 2 to 3 days out, because that gives us time to deliver that pre-listing package that they can review before we even get to the listing appointment, which then allows us to make that listing appointment short, sweet, where they're just ready to sign on the dotted line. You're going to conduct the listing presentation and present marketing and pricing strategies. You're going to ask for the listing, complete the listing paperwork, and obtain signatures. Number 6 is market and service the listing. And number 7 is the after sale follow-up plan. Those are your 7 steps in the listing process. Okay. Keep in mind too, that it's okay to say no, right? So not all listings are created equal. So, you can control who you do business with, right? Most people are going to claim to be interested in selling their home or other real estate, but remember that likes attract. And if you choose to work with negative, angry, demanding, and unrealistic sellers, not only will that require more of your time and your energy and your resources, and you're going to be calling me and Ed and being like, oh my gosh, Amy, I'm exhausted and I don't know what to do with my seller. Can you help me? We don't want you to feel that way. So, if we successfully sell that listing, they're going to refer their friends and family to you, which may be the same kind of like negative Nancy's that you've been working with, and you don't want to do that anymore. So, here are the ramifications of working with unmotivated and unrealistic sellers. You're working so hard to please them and meet all of your demands, which are many, that other motivated sellers pass by you and you don't even notice there were opportunities because you're too busy. Considering the amount of time and energy it's going to take to keep the wrong sellers happy, you could have successfully located and sold at least 4 more listings. Unhappy, unmotivated, or unrealistic sellers stay that way no matter how hard you work. They're going to drag you down emotionally and physically. And you're going to take that negative energy and you're probably going to bring it home with you. And your friends and your family, they don't want that. So it's okay to say no to people who don't meet your professional standards. Make the commitment right now to set the bar high. Your business stands a much greater chance of flourishing, and your health and your friends and your family, they're going to thank you. So if you go and meet with a seller and they're like, well, I know you're saying that it's worth like $580, but I want to list it at $625. You can be like, well, no, that's fine. I understand that that's where you think it's going to list at. If we list it at $625, it's just going to cause it to sit. It's actually going to drive it down. And I don't want you to be disappointed in the level of service that I've provided. And and cause you to leave me a bad review for something that I know is not gonna sell for the price that you want to list it for. So I'll pass you on to let you interview other agents, right? So it's okay to do that. Or it's okay to say if somebody's like, man, I want to list it at 625, and you're like, the value is 580. Be like, hey, okay, first weekend on the market, we'll come on at 625. But can we be in agreement that if we don't get any offers the first weekend on the market, and that we have less than 10 showings, that we will reduce the price on the next Wednesday down to 600,000 or 590 or 580, right? So whatever that is, you can preset those price adjustments in person. If you walk into somebody's house and you just get like bad vibes off them, negative feelings, you're like, man, this isn't somebody I want to spend my time around. These people are dragging me down. Even if they're like, I'll list it at whatever you tell me, you may be like, I don't want to work with you. I think you're going to be difficult. Okay. So it's okay to say no. And whatever your standard is, that's up to you. You can say no with grace, Claudia.
Yes, so I have a question.
Yeah.
I have had some very unmotivated sellers. They don't like technically need to sell, although they're paying 2 mortgages. So we're gonna relist at the end of next month, or the end of this month, the beginning of next month. We were on the market for 6 months. So, and I'm having this discussion with them, and they're just like, well, we can wait. We'll wait. I'm just like, okay, it's also wasting my time. So, and I know these people outside of just professionally, which is also tough. So tell me, what do I say then to them when we go back to be like, okay, we're starting over?
So there's a couple of options. Number one is to set realistic expectations on their price. And if they're not willing to be realistic, right? It always comes down to price. Every home will sell at the right price. So if they're not willing to sell at a reasonable price in which you think it's going to sell, you may be like, hey, so the market doesn't support the price that you're looking to list it at right now. So I think we should hold off longer before we put it back on the market. I think it's going to be a waste of your time and my time, you keeping the house clean, keeping it showing ready, and me and spending money and energy and marketing it because the market's just not supporting that. So Claudia, is it price wise? Is that why it didn't sell? Is that your best guess?
Yes.
Are they wanting to come on higher than what you think it should be listed on at the end of the month?
I have not checked comps recently. We went off, I think, last month or something. So, I mean, we were definitely priced higher. Their property is super unique and it has all this extra space, which is why they also feel like it's worth more. There's nothing really to compare it. However, I just don't think that I haven't talked to them again about price, and I want to be like ready when I have that discussion.
Okay, and they're not living in it currently? Is it vacant?
It is vacant. They live out of state.
Oh,
And
cool.
they have a new house, like they have a house that's paid for, like,
Yeah. So it may be too that you say, hey, I know we were talked about you guys going back on the market come the end of the month. What I would like to do is I would like to get about 5 other agents to come through to look at your property because it is so unique. To give me their opinions of anything that we think needs to be done or where we should price it before we go on the market, and then get some agents from our office to go through the property with you, set a day and be like, hey, I need people to come through this house. I need you to give me your opinion of a value for it. So that you can come at them with more than just your opinion, that you actually have some other agents' opinions of where it should be listed. So that might help them to set realistic expectations. And again, if they aren't quite realistic yet and they don't need to sell it because they're not motivated, then it comes down to you letting them know that maybe now is not the time to list it.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing worse than having a house that's just going to sit on the market because you can't just ignore it and pretend like it doesn't exist. You've got to continue marketing it, and you hate to spend money on something that's just going to sit and not going to sell. So yeah, if you feel like if they're not difficult sellers in the terms that they're like mean and aggressive or treat you poorly, they're just got unrealistic expectations or unrealistic goals because they're just not motivated. It may be like pushing it out until they are a little bit more motivated and they're willing to do what it takes, or until the market comes up enough that it supports the value they want to sell at. But the situation is that if you list something too high, then it ends up selling at less than where it should have listed in the first place. And if they're not willing to come down to where it needs to be, then I would just push it off. I've got a seller like that we keep touching base. So I'm like, the market's just not going to support it. So we just haven't relisted the property, and it is what it is. And she's open to that because she's not motivated to sell it. The other option is to find out and have a conversation with them. If you've got unmotivated sellers, number one, again, it may be something that you just want to put off until they've got more motivation. Number two, it may be that you dig deeper into their why and to figure out, like, I know that you can support the second mortgage, but what would it be like if we got this house sold for you and you no longer had to pay that? Or you've been paying that $3,000 mortgage now for 6 months, which is $18,000. And I really think your property is probably about $30,000 priced too high. So, it's only another couple months of making that payment before we would have come out ahead, coming on at a lower price anyways. So just having those conversations with them about what would that do for you if we got that property sold for you, right? What is that win? So that you can really dig in and remind them of that why, or what's important to them about getting that property sold versus having it sit. All right. If you interact with a seller and you want to say no nicely, right? Mr. and Mrs. Blank, right? I'm afraid that we're not the best match for doing business at this time. I know that I will not be able to meet your expectations, and I would rather turn you down now than disappoint you later. Thank you so much for your consideration, and I wish you the very best, right? Nice, easy way of letting somebody down that you're not going to choose to do business with. Oftentimes, right, somebody's like, oh my gosh, I just got rejected. Well, what do you mean you're not going to be able to meet my expectations? Well, you want to list it at 625, and I really think the highest value that can be supported is 580,000. Like, I'm just being honest with you, and they're gonna be like, oh, okay, well, gosh, I really want to work with you. So what if we listed it? What if we listed it 585, right? So you can decide what you want to do. You can also, well, anyways, so yeah, so that's what I would do, right? If they're like, you don't have to justify it, you don't have to do anything. If they ask why, you can keep it short and sweet, right? If they're like, well, why? You can be like, it's just that I have a very strict criteria for each and every listing that I take. And since I don't make a dime until the title changes hands to the new owners, I have to be sure as I can that your listing's going to sell. And at this time, I don't think that that's going to happen. If anything changes, let's get back in touch with one another, right? Really easy way to let somebody down and to be nice about it. All right, step 1 in the listing process is we're going to complete the pre-listing questionnaire to qualify the seller, make sure they're qualified and motivated. And then we're going to solidify that listing appointment. Sometimes we're on the phone doing our prospecting. We set the listing appointment, go, oh my gosh, I forgot the next step of doing the qualification. That's okay. We can call them again and have a conversation with them and be like, hey, I just have a few questions for you before I confirm our appointment. Right. And then we'll go through the questionnaire. I'll show you to you in just a little minute. You're going to use that pre-listing questionnaire as a guide to ask questions to determine readiness and willingness and ability to sell, or how realistic or unrealistic their expectations are. And then, assuming there's somebody you want to work with, we're going to confirm that listing appointment. Many homeowners may press you for opinions on pricing right away. Some believe the only differentiator between agents is the price they recommend. Others are merely excited and eager to get started right away. So don't make pricing recommendations before seeing the property or before looking at comps. Okay. And you can make a statement like, hey, although I know the market extremely well, I would be doing you a disservice to make a recommendation before I've seen your property and completed the research. Can you imagine a doctor giving you a diagnosis without checking your vitals or running tests? Right? Neither can I. So is Thursday at 3 o'clock or Thursday at 1 o'clock better for you? Right? And set that appointment. The process to qualifying sellers isn't that much different than the process to qualifying buyers, right? We're going to ask several questions to make sure the seller's truly ready, willing, and able to sell. And if we go back to the, well, why don't we just take any listings, right? It comes back to like what Claudia was says, you don't make a dime until it changes hands. So we want to make sure that it's going to sell. So if you've got like an unmotivated or an unrealistic seller, they're going to demand more of your time. Overpriced listings take more of your time and resources. Historically, unmotivated and unrealistic sellers, their listings expire and they don't get sold. And then once they expire, they're probably going to list with somebody else, right? So we want to make sure they're ready, willing, and able. You can make calculated risks. So again, you can determine what works for you in your business. We may, again, put like the price reduction strategy in effect when we sign the listing agreement for somebody that's unrealistic on the price. For somebody that's unmotivated, you can decide what you want to do. If they're unmotivated, but they're willing to sell it at a reasonable price, you think you're not going to have any problems at selling it, then you may want to go ahead and list it versus someone that's not only unmotivated, but they're unrealistic at the second time. Those may be the people you want to pass up, or you may want to, again, like the conversation Claudia and I just said, where you're like, hey, at this time, I don't think the market supports where you want to list this property. And since you don't have to sell it right now, why don't we put it off for like another month and a half, and then we'll revisit comps kind of every 3 weeks. We'll revisit market value. And then once the market can support where you want to sell it, or if you want to make an adjustment to your pricing expectation based on where the current market is, then we can put it on the market. How does that sound, right? And then we're going to stay in contact with that seller to get their property on the market at the ideal time for what they're looking to get off the property, or for when their expectations become more realistic. Use the pre-listing questionnaire. That's why are you thinking of selling? Is one of the questions you're going to ask. Wait, we want to find out their motivation for selling. If you sell your home, where will you go? And if they're saying that they're going to move out of state, do you have a real estate professional where you're looking to move? If your home does not sell, will you stay put or will you move anyways? Right? Ideally, when would you like to be in your new home? We're figuring out timing. In the case of relocation, when do you start your new job? Will all decision makers be present for our appointments? Right? So if it's both people are on title, or if one person's on title, but both people help make the decision, both spouses or both people that own the home, well, you want them both present during the listing appointment. And I always like to ask, what do you think your home is worth? Or what do you think the market value of your home is? That gives me a pretty good indication when I go to do my research of whether we're going to be able to meet or exceed their expectations, or whether we're not going to be able to meet those expectations. Okay. Many sellers might dodge that question, fearing that you're going to use that number against them somehow. However, most homeowners have an idea of the property's value. So probe, ask some more questions, and get a feel while also reassuring the owners. If somebody responds with, oh, I don't know, isn't that what we're hiring you to tell us? You could respond, right? Objection handlers. We could respond with, oh, yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to do the market research and complete a full and complete report for you. However, it's helpful to know if I have a place to start, what do you think it's worth? Right? If they're like, gosh, I don't know, we really don't know, then you could respond with, well, how about the tax assessment, right? Referring to public record. The tax rules show your property to be valued at $550,000. Do you agree with that? Right? That gives you a place to start. Or the neighbor's house sold at $500,000. How do you think yours compares to that? Right? So that might be a good idea to go with as well, something like that. The tax assessments in California aren't completely accurate because the taxes are based generally on when they purchased the property, and they increase a little bit each year, but the tax assessment, sometimes the value doesn't always match the actual market value of the property, where in other states, the tax assessor values the property and it becomes pretty close to market value. So just be careful with that one. but you know, asking about if you can pull up the MLS when you do your pre-listing questionnaire, you've got the neighbor's house that sold down the street, and you ask how do they think their house compares with that. That gives you a pretty good idea of how they're feeling about the value of their property. Let's see. If you hear statements that might be a red flag that they're not ready, willing, or able, such as, oh, there's no hurry. If it sells, it sells. If it doesn't, we'll just stay put. Like, all right, we might have unmotivated sellers. And if we pair that with unrealistic, then we're really like a double negative there. We spent blank on the roof, the chandelier, the pool, for example, and we plan to add that amount to the price. Right? That's a good time to have a conversation of the fact that improvements don't always give you a dollar for dollar return. We've heard that the realtors routinely underprice when they do CMAs or market values. So whenever an agent tells us we're going to add X% to that, right? Red flag, just come in a little lower on your CMA. So that's kind of the listing process, step one of getting that pre-listing questionnaire done to figure out the motivation and qualifying that seller to confirm your listing appointment. Any questions about that conversation that you're going to have with them before you go to their house? All right. This is the pre-listing questionnaire. Again, your sellers are not going to see this. This is something you're going to be filling out as you're talking with them. And again, we don't have to sound like robots when we complete this. We can just get this information as we're having a conversation with them to get it right. If they'd pre-listed their house, if they sold their house before. So this one has, if I share and discuss, if what I share and discuss makes sense and you feel comfortable and confident in my system, will you consider working with me to get your home sold? Yes or no, right? Do you plan to interview more than one agent for the job of selling your home? That's an important thing to know. If they are planning to interview more agents, you can ask, oh, can I ask who else you're planning to interview? Or do you have other appointments set with them already? Your goal, if they've got more appointments set, is to be the first agent through their door. Let's see. Have you tried selling your house before? If yes, why do you think it didn't sell? And what is helping you decide to sell this home, or why are you looking to sell your home? So those are all good pre-listing questions, in addition to the ones that I previously mentioned. Oops, on the last slide, which were, why are you thinking of selling? If you sell your home, where will you go? If your home does not sell, will you stay put or will you move anyways? Ideally, when would you like to be in your new home? When do you start your new job if they're moving out of area? And what do you think your home is worth? Leticia, question?
Yes, I wanted to ask you really quick. Where do we find this questionnaire, or how do we download it?
Yes, that is a great question. I will track it down because I believe I have a copy of it. And as long as you log your attendance on this training, I'll have Abby send it out to everybody who's on the training today.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Claudia, did you have a question? Or
So yeah,
thought?
it was also the questionnaire. Is the next slide showed like a picture. Is that the question you're talking about? Or are you talking about yours that you made?
No, so I would ask the questions that I mentioned on the previous slide and also these as well. I don't think that the seller needs to necessarily see this questionnaire either and fill it out, but I would, but you could always give it to them as homework, I guess. But I would want these questions answered ahead of time. So this is something that I would add with those other questions and for my own personal use.
And the previous slide only showed 3 things. It wasn't like a list of questions. Was that
Yeah.
what you were showing? Okay, so that just want to make sure I'm
We
looking
will.
at this.
Yeah, there is no list of questions on this one. I have it on my cheat sheet on this slide, so I will make sure that those questions also get sent out with a copy of that listing questionnaire.
Cool, thank you.
Absolutely. You guys are giving me a lot of homework. Abby, you better write this down to remind me. All right. Step 2 in the listing process is going to be the research and preparation, right? We want to look up title information to make sure that the people that we're talking to are actually the people on the title of the home, because they need to be present. right? If it's in a trust, that makes sure that we know that we need to ask for that copy of the trust, or if it's held in a corporation, right? Daniel, in just a little bit, Abby will put up a link to log your attendance. And maybe she'll do it soon so you guys can work on that. You may want to drive the area of the property to gather additional research if you're not familiar with that area, to find community features, amenities, etc. Note any challenges which may affect the sellability. Like, that's a good time to look at the curb appeal too, because oftentimes the curb appeal reflects what's inside the house. Preview any comparable properties currently on the market. Maybe take some exterior photos of the property. I probably wouldn't do that at that time. Look at the property through a potential buyer's eyes and note the following, right? Is the landscape overgrown, right? Curb appeal. Anything else noted? Is the paint peeling? Is the roof in good shape? How's the curb appeal? The garage doors, are they in good shape? Remember, the better research, the more prepared you're going to be to handle objections and outperform the competition. So it's okay to swing by the neighborhood and the property and do some research. There's a more in-depth pre-listing questionnaire here, so I'll find that one as well and send it over to you. Oh, because this is helping you to do research. So this is something that you may want to ask the seller ahead of time. Such like, are you the sole owner of the property listed? Is it held in a trust? Look, I didn't even read that. How long have you lived in the property? Why are you looking to sell? Do you have an idea? Oh, this is a great one. So I will find this pre-listing questionnaire and send it out as well. The attendance link is in the chat box. I think I have both of these in there. How old is the roof? Any leaks or issues? How old is the air conditioner? What kind of flooring do you have throughout the home? Has the kitchen been remodeled? If so, when? My favorite is, you're like, has the kitchen been remodeled? They're like, oh yeah, absolutely. And you're like, when? They're like 1994. And you're like, great, perfect. What kind of cabinets? What color? Is there a pantry? If it's a techie seller, you could ask them, hey, when we get off the phone today, do you mind sending me a picture of your kitchen, your bathrooms, and the backyard and your family room? So that as I'm looking at other comparable properties and running the market analysis, that I have something to compare it to. So it's okay to ask them that, instead of asking them like, what paint color do you have? When was the last time the walls were painted? Have the bathrooms been remodeled? What color or style is the vanity? This is a little bit more in detail than I would go. Step 3 is going to be the listing presentation. We're going to create and deliver the pre-listing package. This picture is really messed up. Sorry about that. It's just showing you that on Realty One, there is a listing package that you can go in there and there's a pre-listing package that you can do. So you want to update that, and then hold on, because I think I have it somewhere. Oh, okay. We're going to do the CMA. In addition to your pre-listing package, just so you know, I usually include with my pre-listing package a copy of the market analysis report. Oftentimes I don't put like a price range in there because I want to save that until we have our conversation, unless I'm pretty sure of a price range of the property. Then I might put a range in there, but it's always a range. And then I also include copies of like the listing agreement, a copy of the TDS, and a copy of the SPQ, because those are the documents they're going to have to fill out and sign. So I want them to know them and be comfortable with them. So pre-listing package, CMA report, copies of documents usually go out to them, and usually on their doorstep. I usually try to hand deliver that ahead of our listing presentation and just let them know that we're looking for it with a cover letter that, hey, I'm looking forward to working with you. Our appointment is on Friday at 3 o'clock. Please take some time before our appointment to review this information so that I can answer any questions that you may have. That gives you a good time to be able to kind of condense that listing presentation, that listing appointment down to really just getting the listing agreement signed. Let's see. Make sure you know the market, right? When you're doing a CMA, whether it's a seller's market, a buyer's market, or a balanced market, or a completely all over the place market like we're currently in. Some houses get multiple offers, others sit for 6 months. Just kind of know what the market is. Know too, like sometimes even though it's kind of looks like a seller's market with like multiple offers, a lot of those offers are still asking for closing cost assistance. to buy down the rates or to do whatever. So just be able to have those conversations with your sellers when you sit down with them. So know what the market is. Any questions? Again, we're going to dive into the listing presentation next week. And we will probably have time as well that I can show you where all it's 12:10 now. So where I can show you where all the listing presentations and everything are in one design and the one zone area, because there's some options there for you. Any questions or thoughts before we wrap up for today? Was this information
Thank you.
helpful? You're welcome.
Yes,
Lizzie.
thank you. It was very helpful.
Good.
I just wanted, like you said, I would like to know where to find everything. That will be really nice.
Absolutely. I'll get you those questionnaires.
Thank you.
Yep. Fabulous. Well, thank you everyone for joining me today. I really appreciate it. I thought there for a minute that I was going to have to teach myself today. So it's always more fun when we have some interaction. So I appreciate you showing up. Tomorrow we have in the office and on Zoom, we have, I don't remember his name, but he will be back tomorrow, or he'll be there tomorrow. It's set up by Lisa Visa at Fidelity National, and she's got he's going to come in and talk about how to avoid getting sued. Super important. So don't miss that one. That's at 11 a.m. and then at 7 p.m. the same link, we will be going over hands-on on Barry's of the CMA reports. Perfect. Daniel, we will try to always get you a reminder to join. Sometimes on Tuesday or Wednesday evenings, I slack on that. I apologize. But you're welcome. Fabulous. Oh, Robert Brand is how to get out of court or how to stay out of court tomorrow. He'll be fabulous. So Zoom, same link, or in person. I think even in person, though, he's joining us via Zoom. So just be aware of that. But Lisa will be in the office, I think. Fabulous. I'll see you all tomorrow. Have a fabulous day.
Thank you.
Absolutely.